This episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. The Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BRUTALLY and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give
up. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Lord Nelson, formerly of Stuck Mojo, also of his Live and Loud with the Lord podcast. And I want to thank mutual friend Scott Bowling for putting us together a while ago. And apologies to Lord Nelson for taking the time it took to set up this conversation and to have it. I'm going to kind of do something different in this intro than I usually do, because usually I talk about kind of what the episode is about or a talking point about it. And I guess this is kind of directly related to part of a talking point in the show. But I kind of woke up in a funk today, and it's not really just today. It's kind of been going on for a little bit. I would say there's been kind of a transformative thing that happened to me recently. In going to Atlanta for my birthday with my wife and a handful of friends and so forth, I kind of had a couple of different thoughts on a lot of things. You know, I went out with some of my really close friends and a new friend that we've made in the last little bit. And the new friend is a little bit younger than the rest of us by almost 10 years in some instances. And it was one of those things where I realized that there is a little bit of a generational gap where people are constantly just living life through their phones and posting everything. And I do that as well, but I'm trying not to anymore because I want to be more in the moment and more like, this is for me. It doesn't need to be for somebody else. It doesn't need to be posted online. You know, I can go away for 4 or 5 days and barely interact with anyone via social media. And it was just kind of a little bit like, it kind of took sort of like the reason I love Atlanta, because it's kind of like my thing. It's my getaway. It's mine. And to kind of have someone just share so much of it and like have me in a bunch of photos and almost everything we're doing, I was like, it's not really the vibe. But I also kind of learned that that's just who they are and how they, experience their things. And, maybe in 6, 7, 8 years when they're, my age or a few years older, when they're the age of my friends, maybe they'll have reached that same conclusion as well. Not living so much in social media and, presenting at literally everything you're doing. I think the other thing that happened that was really interesting was I've been trying to do TM for meditation for the last little bit. I've talked to Porter and a handful of other people that do it, and everyone always talks about how great it is and how it makes them feel, and just kind of centering a couple of different points in your day, depending on how often you do it. And it was one of those things where the B&B we had was super beautiful, and so everyone was getting ready for the day, and I'm the only guy, so I just throw on clothes and I'm done. I don't have to put on makeup or get my hair ready or any of that. And so I was outside on the back patio, the back porch thing that we had, and it's super nice and it's elevated. So it's about kind of middle to higher end, like of the trees that were in the backyard. And it was kind of nice and light and breezy. And I can, even closing my eyes right now, I can kind of go right back there. And I just sat there because I was like, this is as good a chance as any as I'm ever going to get to really just sit somewhere and be and not have someone come get me or bother me or anything. And I think based on what people tell me the experience is like, I think I had the full experience of doing it. I felt at one point like I couldn't feel the weight of my body at all. At different times, I kind of saw colors, a lot of like greens and yellows and browns. And then toward the end, when I was probably about 20 minutes in, I kind of saw this like really interesting, like purple, like a violet kind of color. And I was kind of nowhere and everywhere all at kind of once. Like I was very aware of all the trees. I was very aware of like different sounds around me, but I also was able to block it out and just be there. And I kind of like, I remember everyone kind of came up to where I was to come get me. And everyone's like, are you all right? Like you look all teary eyed and stuff like that. And I was like, no, I'm just, I don't know. Like, I don't know. And I didn't want to tell them what I was doing because I felt kind of like this weird, like, I was up here and then this is how I felt and this is what I experienced. And I don't know. I felt not shame or embarrassment. I didn't even know how to articulate what was going on. So how could I explain it to somebody when I didn't even know what was going on? And it was one of those things where I really took that feeling, and I haven't tried doing it again because I haven't felt like I've been in the right headspace to try to do it. And I know that's sort of against the whole idea of like getting in the routine of clearing your head and trying to get to that point. But I was walking around kind of just like feeling really good, like almost like detoxed, for lack of a better term. And the last couple of days to a week or so, I've really kind of been thinking about relationships. And, this episode actually starts with Lord Nelson and I talking about, Scott Bowling putting us together and how, I try to find the qualities about the people that I know and are friends with. How do I find those same qualities in the people that we have as mutual friends, but we've never met? Like, is there those qualities, or what is it about these people that separates and makes them friends with people I'm friends with? But I also have kind of come to this conclusion recently that it's like I stopped putting forth the effort into relationships because I was like, I don't think I'm getting back anything. And if all I'm doing is giving, then I have nothing left to give to other people that really deserve it, who are kind of giving me something back as well. And I came up and I woke up this morning thinking about a few different people, and I was like, I haven't talked to that person in X amount of time because I stopped making forth the effort. And I wasn't really shocked by the fact that like people won't reach out or won't keep up their end of a relationship or whatever. But it was more this feeling of like, I feel sad that I wasted this time maintaining something that bared no fruit. And I know that maybe is a selfish way of looking at it, but it's definitely something where when I do it, it's just like, what's the point? Like, I spent a day with my wife yesterday and it was so much fun, and we literally did nothing. And I just kind of think of all the things that I have invested more time into instead of that. And that's the relationship I should put more effort into, because it's the one that, I chose to be with and live with and make a life with and all that. And so anything that kind of I feel like takes away from that, doesn't give me that same kind of ROI, why would I keep it around? Why would I keep that in my life if it's not going to bear any fruit? And I kind of thought about that a little bit more leading up to me talking about this episode with Lord Nelson, because we get into some really heavy things, and I will talk more about that when we're done with this chat with Lord Nelson. So I'll see you on the other side of it. So it's always funny, actually. I think when you are kind of put together by other people, because what kind of is interesting about it is I feel like it's, especially if you've never met or really talked, you kind of try to find, or at least I do, the parts of like your friends that you have in common. Of like, okay, like I know, like, so Scott Bowling is kind of how we got linked together. And so it's funny because it's like Scott's, as I have always said when I talk about him, he's kind of the embodiment of, Southern hospitality and all of its, whatever you think that means, that's what Scott is. He is
100%.
Southern hospitality personified. And so when I talk to different people that I know through other people, I always try to find like that connection of how I connect to somebody. What do I see in those people from our mutual connect? Gotcha. So I assume I'm interested to see where the hospitality, where the things that I identify with Scott, where those will come out in our conversation through you.
I feel you, man. I feel you.
I see you got the Good Company skate deck actually behind you as well.
Hey, man, listen. Scott hooked me up. And, my man Rich is on there also, so it's a lovely thing, man. It means something to me. I was just so thankful, man, when he gifted it to me. I was just like, man, I really appreciate it. And, yeah, man, Scott's he's just one of those dudes, man. He's a great human being, man. He really is. No doubt.
100%. It's actually funny, speaking of skate decks and Scott Bowling, I can flip the camera to kind of show two of them. So I was in his house. Yeah. I'm real fucking bad at doing this. But that Foo Fighters one, he had an extra one in his office.
Awesome.
And I was like, I had hit him up before we left, and I was like, can I buy that off you? Because I really, like, that record means a lot to me.
Right.
And then he just was like, I'll just send it to you. And then the same with one of the Aaliyah skate decks, actually the one that's like right over my head, this one right here. He sent it to me because he knows I'm such a huge fan. And he was like, do you have this one? I was like, no, that was like a really expensive variant. And by the time it came out and sold so quickly, I wasn't even able to cop one. But it's like one of the I think there's only 5 total different skate decks between 2 different companies, and I have 4 out of the 5.
Oh,
and so I was like, yeah, I just don't have the money for that right now. And then fast forward, like, I think 2 weeks, and that showed up, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, man, like it's. It is, but I think the thing is like we're so conditioned, I think, now that like anything you do or that someone does for you is sort of like some sort of unspoken debt that they'll hold over you. Like, oh, I did this. It's sort of actually something I've been talking a little bit differently about in a different capacity, but transactional relationships. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's kind of always one of those where it's weird because I feel like, especially being in the music industry, like no one ever does you a favor without it coming with something down the line. And so to meet someone like Scott, where he just kind of does things out of the goodness of out of his heart, it's one of those things where that's sadly not normal. It's not something that I at least experience daily, where I'm like, oh, this is just how he is and who he is, and he wants nothing but friendship and just, non-denominational things in return.
I think that is, I'm going to be honest with you. I do my best to live my life that way. If I do something for you, I've done it for you. That's just what it is. That's just the way I was raised. It's just what I believe. I still believe in love for mankind and human beings. And sometimes that gets me in trouble. My wife will say a lot of times, just like, people just aren't like that. You've just always been this person, and everybody else does this right here. And so I've had to take my lumps over the years in finding those things out. But I'm all about love, man. I'm just about love, and that's just all I want. And so I want everybody to miss me with all the madness and all the BS. If you talking all that BS, just keep it over there. I like to have fun. I like to clown. I can clown with the best of them, but I genuinely just want love in my world. That's just all I want, man. I don't have time for the other stuff, man. I just don't. So I hear you. I'm with you, man.
Was it hard kind of traversing, especially in a touring aspect, where I feel like I'll say, like, I don't see this very often, just because I think the level of people I'm dealing with are such pros that people will kind of weed out the bullshit at that point. But was it kind of tough having how you are out on the road, where I think people are more apt to try to take advantage of your generosity and your kindness because of whatever they think they can get off of you, whether it be a job, money, fame, hanger-ons, whatever.
I was always me, regardless of any situation. I just was always going to be me. I just remember so many of my friends, my close friends. I remember Cabo San. I call him Lucas. I call him Cabo San. His name is Lucas, so I call him Cabo San Lucas because I always used to say his life is a vacation. But that's my guy, though. You know, he and Joel Star, another friend of mine, they always said, just be you. Just always be you, man. And that's all I've ever been is me. And no matter when, you know, certain situations might have come up to where, you know, I might not agree about something, I'm still going to be me. I'll always speak my piece when I feel that it needs to be spoken. But as I went on, man, I just watched a lot. Touring, I watched a lot because it was different for me. You know, I was in a place that I hadn't been before, you know, with a lot of different people I hadn't been around. So me, I can get along with anybody, man. I don't care who it is. You can drop me in, boom. I'm going to make my way through there, you know, and I'm going to have a good time, and I'm going to smile, and I'm going to laugh. And if somebody makes me feel uncomfortable, or whether it's something that I don't think I can deal with, I just remove myself from the situation. And that's just who I am, man. And I'm always going to do my very best to be me and not let people take me out of my character. I'm just not going to do it.
I feel like that obviously had to have been in that character trait had to be instilled in you at such a young age. Was that something that was, I don't want to say taught in like your home life, but like where did the foundation of that begin? Was it, you know, your parents? Was it, you know, someone in your family that you saw and just kind of realized that that's the way to be?
Well, I'm a military kid, and of course, you know, always disciplined with Pops. You know, Pops was real. He was real with it. You know, I can think back to some of those spankings back there. I say spankings, and let me go ahead and say some ass whippings that he used to give us. But you know, really,
I've been there.
Yeah, my mom was always about love and peace and happiness, and she passed in '85 of colon cancer. But I think that the majority of my family, my sisters and brothers, is 5 of us, 3 girls and 2 boys. The majority of us, we really take that to heart. We took that to heart, the love aspect of things, and we just always try to do our best in that way. We always try to give love, and yeah, you want to receive love back, but you know, when I give love genuinely. It's just who I am, and that's how I grew up, and that's what I was taught. Thanks to moms, you know, it's love.
5 siblings in total. Where do you fall on that in the line of, you know, where they are?
So I'm the 4th of 5.
Oh,
I am. I always say I'm the baby, even though I have a baby sister, younger sister. But I always say I'm the baby because I was the baby. I was like, I'm the prize kid out. I'm the prize. No. They love this all the same. But yeah, most definitely, man. I'm 4 or 5, and great place to be, man. You know, big sister always looked out for me. You know, big brother wouldn't let me hang out with him too much because he was just like, you just such a clown. You always laughing all the time or whatever like that. You know, he's older. He was more serious. But yo, man, everything's just love. I'm just gonna be me and enjoy the life I live, man.
I suppose at that point your parents are probably just like, man, we already exhausted ourselves parenting. We're just gonna kind of let it natural selection with the rest of y'all get it done.
That was my baby sister, man. It's just like, because she's 5 years younger than me, so she we always thought that she got away with more. You know,
no, of course.
But it's all love, though.
But you know, it's interesting because as someone who, like, I had a brother, I never knew him. He passed away when I was 2, when he was an infant, so I don't have any memories or anything of him.
Right.
But I always find it interesting. I feel like when those who come from kind of bigger families, like my dad, he's got 3 other siblings, and most of like the families I think of those generations are, you know, bigger families and so forth. And on my mom's side, you know, they were a farming family, so obviously you had big families to work on the farm.
Right.
And I always kind of find it interesting because I feel like people who come from large families usually do really well where in situations where you have to work with others, work with different personality types, because that's literally what your family dynamic always was.
Right.
But I don't think anyone really thinks about your upbringing really kind of like laying the foundation for how you are with these kind of things.
Indeed. I think that family means a lot. My wife and I, we really, let me say this. I might hang out with you and I might see something great that you've done or that your parents have done for you. And I might grab that and implement that into my world because it's something great that I think that could work for me. So I'm not going to say my life was the greatest growing up and all those things like that, of course. But what I did with a lot of my friends, my military friends, and even friends beyond the military family, is that I just grabbed things from them that I thought was spectacular in their households. And I implemented that into my family with my wife and my children. Because, you know, what was important to my wife and myself was giving our children the best, allowing them to still learn and be disciplined, but understand that there's better things out there and you can have what you want if you work hard at it. And so we were there for them. We traveled everywhere. They played basketball and sports and anything educational. I have 3 children. I have an older daughter and twins, a boy and a girl, and they've all graduated from college, and they're all into their fields of just doing what they're doing, and they're doing well, and they give us great presents for birthdays and Christmas, and it was just my anniversary on the 5th. And so it's all love, man. You know, so we just work hard at being that and being that family unit, and family is important. You know, not everybody has the same dynamics in family, but family is really important. I mean, it's super important to me.
You know, a couple things you touch on there that I find interesting, and I'll kind of use the word malleable. You know, I think what's interesting is I kind of do the same thing. Like I'm a very observant person. I can talk a shitload more than others, but at times, you know, I think with me working in the bar industry and stuff like that, and having done a lot of other things, there's kind of, as I've gotten older, knowing when to kind of be quiet and just observe and see your environment, see how people are, learn from other people. Like, even if they're not literally teaching you something, you can still learn from watching them. And what's been interesting at times is, you know, from different people, like sort of kind of going again back to Scott, and, you know, how to me, I like trying to take different character traits of people. Like, if I notice someone is a lot more quiet and they don't speak, but when they do, it's kind of that quality over quantity mentality. So sometimes I try to take from people things that I think are more valuable to live a better life, to be someone that will allow for just being a good person. And I don't think a lot of people take the time to look at other things objectively like that without feeling maybe a sense of jealousy for something I don't have.
Right.
And I think I don't know where that comes into play. I don't know if that's just a lesser than mentality or whatever, but it is something I think about quite a bit, where it's what makes people look at the same thing but have a completely different outcome of, like, instead of being like, that's dope, I want to be inspired by that, versus I'm a hate on this person because of something they're doing I ain't doing. And then it's like, but you could be. What's stopping you?
Everybody's not built the same. Everybody doesn't have the same mentality, and that's another thing. I thank my wife a lot for that, of knowing and seeing that people have different perspectives because people have grown up differently, and who knows what has been taught to them or what has been going on in their world. So, you know, I definitely, as you say, which is really, really important, I love to run my mouth, but I also love to listen. I will sit there and listen just to see where you are. Just to what did Jackie Chan say in Rush Hour with Chris Tucker? He said, I like to let people talk so I can just see how full of bullshit they are. And you can really, because you know when people are talking crazy or saying something. There's a lot of times that I might say something to somebody just to see how crazy they are when I meet people, just to see, you know, where are they mentally. You know, I might do something to poke them a little bit to see how they react to it, but then it lets me know how I can approach you better. Right. Now, I agree with you 100%, man. It's but once again, everybody's not built the same, and I just take each person case by case. I'm going to show them love anyway, but they'll let me know how I'm going to treat them, or if they're worth me being around them, or vice versa. Hey,
Trying to do the mental math real quick. If you have 3 kids and they're all graduated from college, that should put them at about 20, anywhere from 22 on. I'll say if they're graduated.
Yes. Well,
okay.
I've been with my wife a very, very long time. We've been together. So my oldest daughter is 38.
Okay, same age as me then.
Yeah, and my children, my twins, they're 28. Yes,
okay.
Indeed. Yeah. So no, excuse me. I'm getting old. They're 30. 8 years apart. 28. They're 8 years apart. So they are 30. They just turned 30 April 29th, and my daughter just turned 38 in March 3rd. So my oldest daughter. So man, listen, hey, just family, and we're all close, and we've been close, and we will continue to be close. We still get together family wise and have a good time, man. So it's just love.
Well, it was more of the question of trying to figure out a timeline of, if you've been married, if you had kids when you were doing the Stuck Mojo thing and touring, because something I find to be interesting as I think about it now, as someone who doesn't have kids and, doesn't want to have kids with my wife or anything, but thinking about the perspective of change of how you have to do things. And I always find it kind of interesting, this duality potentially that you have to exist in your home life and your professional life, where it's like it's your job. It's not a normal job, but it also can be a teaching point to your kids, where it's like, work hard, don't be afraid to take chances, try to do something that you're passionate about. And the old adage of like, if you love what you do, you're never working a day in your life.
Right, exactly.
So I kind of wanted to maybe kind of dig a little bit there about, was it hard to leave and tour and have to do the grind of a band that has to support a record when you have a family at home, and missing the time, a lot of the firsts or things like that?
Hey, great question, man. Definitely a great question, because they were definitely, my daughter was heading into college. My younger ones were just about to go into high school. And let me get my timeline right. Once again, man.
I know these years go so fast once you get older.
They're all grown, man. Yeah.
Well, and we all lost collectively like 2 years, which I don't even remember that we lose 2 years. I'm like, that happened 3 years ago. And I'm like, no, pandemic. I lost 2. Like that was 4 years ago. That was 5 years ago.
well, let me say that they supported. It wasn't the easiest thing. But for me, I was all in. I was blessed to have the opportunity, thanks to Bones, thanks to Rich, Mike Martin, Sean Delson, Nails, Frank Fonseray, Mark Willis, thanks to all of the Stuck Mojo family fans around the world, because they did nothing but give love to a big guy coming in trying to replace this legend named Bones. It wasn't, and once again, I wasn't replacing him. In my mind, I was just filling in with him, because to me, there's always the opportunity that he would come back and bring that greatness back to Mojo. I had nothing to do with the other stuff that they were going through, but I just took the opportunity, and I was thankful for it and blessed to have that opportunity to do music. And so traveling was just different for me, to be on that tour bus, and you're here one day in this city, and then when you're in Europe, you're in one city in one country, and then you're in another country, and then you're in another country. It was really something else. So I did a lot of watching and listening, especially on the first tour with Ectomorph and with my brothers Vengeance and out of Napa, California, and Tenside and Vendetta. I'm running off the names, but all these guys are still close with me to this day. Music has brought so much to me. But getting back to your original question, I missed my son's first college basketball game. And that was hard for me, because I was just like, man, it's something that we were always there for our children, doing those kind of things. My oldest daughter is like, I missed one of her, I think her second prom, maybe. That kind of stuff affects me. I'm an emotional person. So that meant the world to me, to see those things, because once again, we're still so close to this day. And I love my babies. They're all my babies. My daughters are my princesses. My son is my prince. and it will forever be that way. No matter how old we get, they're grown, and I treat them as they're grown, but they'll still always be my babies. But yeah, it was difficult, but the experience was so great of being out there on the road and learning and listening and performing and being on stage and seeing the amazing people around the world and the cultures around the world. That would, I watch a lot of that stuff, like when I watch television, to see the cultures, the different cultures of people, being in London or going to Russia and being in Czech Republic or Germany, so many good people. Pierre, what's going on in Germany? Just a lot of people that are amazing. So I enjoyed myself. It was difficult, but it was worth every single second of it, I must say.
There's a couple of things in there that I think are interesting to touch on. And I think it's more, having done this show, talking to a lot of different people. I mean, just different walks of life, but I'll say more to the point, from different geographical places, not here in the States.
Right.
And it kind of teaches you different things about our culture, our society, our world. And, I've said all along in the last, I'll say 6-7 years, again, I think I need to add 2 more. So probably like the last 9 years, with my wife, traveling the US and so forth, it has become this thing where it's expanded my knowledge and perception of the world around me.
Yeah.
Not just like the little bubble I live in here in, Michigan and Grand Rapids, but, the world, and seeing these different things and being able to kind of take in different cultures and so forth, and to be places that are, like going to the Alamo. Like, honestly, I was kind of like, this feels, I don't know. We talk about it, we learn about it in history books and all that. And I'm here and I'm like, this is it.
Right.
Like there's literally a fucking mall right there. Like, I don't feel like this is it. I don't feel like this is the Alamo that I was expecting.
Right.
And it's kind of weird when you actually start experiencing these things and kind of gaining more knowledge and perspectives on stuff that you just don't have other than maybe from a book, that I can't help but it feels like it completely expands your mind and your horizons on what things are, how things could be, because you've seen more. But one of the things you said that I think is so interesting, and I think it just speaks to how, I'll put it on me, how not knowledgeable we are on the world around us. I was talking to the singer of Future Palace, this band she lives over in Berlin, and she was talking about how she had been here in the States. Her sisters live in like California and Oregon, I believe. Right. And she was talking about how the size of the U.S. just trips her out. And she made a comment about like, yeah, I can take a train and I'm over, and I, geographically, I'm still kind of like, I don't know where that is, but I just kind of go, okay, and nod my head like I know. But it was like, it's a trip to me to think that like I can drive 8 hours north in Michigan and I'm still in Michigan.
Right.
But it's crazy to me that she can be like, oh, I can take a train in an hour. I'm in a whole new country that has different laws, different customs, different everything.
100%. Yes.
And it was, as she was saying that, it just kind of blew my mind, because it's like, okay, the only thing really that changes from state to state that I guess I have to be aware of is like, what time do your bars close? And can I buy alcohol on Sunday? And if I can, where? And are your stores separated where it's like liquor and beer? Like weird things like that. It's like, there's not really anything that I have to like think about, not like that.
Right.
And it's so weird to think that this podcast especially has given me that opportunity, that I can only imagine touring does it and amplifies it by 1,000,000%.
Yeah. I mean, going to those different countries, man, just like you said, she's being able to hop a train and she's here.
Yeah.
And once again, all the different cultures, man, and just looking at everything, man. And I got caught a lot of times being certain places to where I started feeling like I was at home, and I had to realize that I'm not at home. It's just like, because I just got comfortable. And it's like you start looking around, it's like, wait a minute, hold on a second. This is where you are. And as you said before, when we read things, we're reading books in our history and talk about European history. And as we're reading these things in our minds, we've created what it really is. I know I'm a super visual person. So when I'm reading something, I see everything. So when you get to certain places, your expectations are kind of like, this is what it's going to be. It's not always like that. I live in South Carolina. I've been to many places. been to California, Texas, Chicago. I've been to Michigan, going to Indiana. I've been a few places here in the States, and everything still seems the same to me. The only place that I've been that has been beyond my expectations has been New York City. New York City was just like, it was just, when I got there, I was just like, wow, it is exactly what they said it is. And it's just like, my goodness, buildings and just, when we were flying in, when we were driving through, because we were going to Boston to see my sister graduate, because they live in Massachusetts, live in Boston. And it was just like, wow, man, this is crazy. Just seeing all these buildings of what it was when you see it on television. So, but everywhere else I've been, it's just like, I like South Carolina. I mean, I really do. I love it. You might feel the same way about Michigan. It's just like, hey, okay, this. Because now I might come to Michigan and be like, you guys have the Great Lakes. I like to go fishing. That really, when I think about Michigan, that's what I'm thinking about. And I'm like, man, I would love to see that, because when I see water, all I'm thinking about is fishing and kind of thing. So that would probably excite me in a great deal. Just seeing those kind of things. But yeah, man, just there's so much to be seen. There's so much culture in Europe. And Sean Delson, who played bass for Stuck Mojo and who's in Guardians of the Jukebox now also, with Rich, his wife is from England. And so I remember asking her, they were at my house when we were recording, and I remember asking her, what is the difference between England and here? She said, everything in England is just so old. Mm-hmm. It's old. So when we went over there and we went to Westminster Abbey and all these things, and then you're looking, it's like 1500s. And I was like, this is bananas. This is crazy. But to see the architecture and see what they had built that is still holding up to this day is crazy. So those are the things that really excite me when I look at things like that. Now, that's the kind of history that I really love. And so I know I'm everywhere, man, but you just got
that's what the whole show is.
My mind is zooming, like just thinking about all these things that were, and how much I really enjoyed and I embraced and take all that different culture. And we were in Austria, and Sean and I went through this little, I don't know how it was, the main street, and then you go through something, and it was like this gigantic courtyard where they were selling fruits and vegetables and pastries and all kinds of things. And then you looked up, and there was just a mountain, a wall of a mountain. And I stood there and I looked around, and man, I started tearing up. And he looked at me, he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, you wish your family could be here, don't you? And I was just like, yes, to see all of this beauty. I said, because this is beautiful. And it's something that everybody, I would just really just tell everybody, if you get a chance to travel and go see things, go see the world if you can. Please go see the world. And I thank music for me seeing, a few things. Military, yes, I've been to Panama and some other places. But, man, if you get a chance, man, go do what you can do, man. Enjoy this world, man.
I think a few things on that, me being from Delaware originally, which obviously is the first state.
Yeah.
And even if you go back, like, it's still, I'm not going to say like it was how it was when I grew up there in the mid 80s and early 90s before moving here. But I remember, kind of speaking to teaching and so forth, it's like there was such an importance placed upon the learning of how the Americas came to be, the original 13 colonies, like that we were the first state, the Declaration of Independence and all that kind of stuff, that it wasn't like a week of history. It was like a whole curriculum, learning all these things, learning who the people are, learning the significance of all these things and how it shaped everything.
Right.
And I think like what was really crazy to me is coming here to Michigan and all of that was condensed to like 2 days. And I'm like, that's wild. And even thinking about, seeing so much of, the East Coast preserved, like we have the old brick roads and we don't really do anything to them. We keep them as they are. So have the horse hitches, the Capitol buildings and such are still, everything is trying to be as preserved as possible. But something I think that's so interesting and I guess it's more of a geographical thing moving here and just kind of keeping up with the times as they've changed as I've gotten older. But it's like I went from a place where we preserved the foundation of our country,
Right.
but then the rest of the country, and most of us are tear it down, rebuild it, new. Don't let anything have any history, because what's the point? We need new and better.
Right.
But like you said, it's crazy that you can literally go secondhand accounts, but you can literally go overseas, and in some of these parts of Europe and so forth, there's buildings that still exist that you can literally see where like cannons or gunfire or things demolished a part of the building, but the rest of the building is still intact.
Right.
And it's like, something, I forget who told me this. I think it was on the show. They were talking about how the Japanese culture, when something like furniture, or whatever, or something would be broken, they would fix it with gold. So the thing that was its we'll call it the character flaw, or the flaw of the thing, now has value. It's the most valuable part of the thing.
Wow.
And I think about how we don't do that. We don't celebrate kind of where we come from. Yeah. We revisionist history super bad as a culture. And I think a lot of it is just weird. And one thing, because I kind of was like, South Carolina, like I went through the Carolinas with my wife. We went to Myrtle Beach, drove from Myrtle Beach to why am I blanking on the name? Gosh, it's where that Southern Charm show is shot. Why can't I think of it?
Charleston.
Yes, there we go.
That's where I'm originally from. I'm from Charleston. Yeah.
So my wife and I went there, and first of all, I don't think I've ever seen so many sawgrass baskets or wheatgrass baskets in my life as I did littered across the road with all the sales of sawgrass or wheatgrass baskets.
Right.
But the thing that really stood out to me, and it was really, because I think when I travel, I think I kind of am very empathetic to a lot of situations of what that place has gone through.
Right.
And one of the things that just really, for me, struck me, and it seems so blatantly obvious, and I'll even say it started actually in Myrtle Beach. We went to a biker bar that my wife wanted to go to because we like dive bars.
Right.
And it's an empty giant bar. And I remember they had a t-shirt, because they also have like a weird t-shirt factory with a bunch of like rebel flag stuff all over their clothing. And I remember behind the bar, there was a mannequin with blackface, and it wore a shirt that said, "I'm the token black guy of the bar." And I kind of wanted to be like, what the fuck? And then I started to turn, and it felt like that scene in Beetlejuice where he's like looking at the numbers and the guy with the shrunken head's next to him.
Right.
I kind of felt like that. Like I kind of went to turn to say something like, "Are you fucking seeing this?" And it was a black dude. And I was just like, well, fuck, I guess if you're okay with it, I can't say shit. So I'm just going to sit here and drink my PBR and smoke a cigarette just because I can. And that was kind of the foundation, I feel like, of where I just kind of was like, y'all are celebrating this shit kind of openly. We got to Charleston and we went on, it was like a Sunday or Saturday. And it was just like a farmer's market type environment, but it was an old building where slaves used to be auctioned off.
Right.
And I was like, I'm feeling some kind of way, some old white lady selling her doilies and shit, where people were literally, families were broken up. People were literally sold as indentured servants and shit. If this was, I feel like if this was back home in Delaware, this building would just be a building that we learn about history from. We learn about Charleston's history, Americans' history. But I didn't get that vibe there. And then it was weird because, like, I think at night it becomes a rooftop bar. And I'm like, man, there's just all kinds of fucked up things going on with this building and how they've repurposed it. And I just was not a fan of that. And I felt like there was kind of a lot of not hiding. And I'm not saying that like you need to hide where your culture comes from. But I think there's some of it where it's like you do realize that like the things you're kind of celebrating are not the right things to be celebrating where your culture came from.
Right.
And I don't know if that's just a me thing, but that's something I took away very strongly being in South Carolina in the two different places I went to.
I'm going to say that me being a military kid, and once again, my mom and dad both from Charleston, and I didn't see a lot of the stuff until we would come back to certain things. Like there's a tree where they used to hang the slaves and things like that. And then when you talk about like Memorial Day, you know, you go check Memorial Day, check the history on Memorial Day. It has a lot to do with Charleston, or it comes from Charleston. there's a whole lot out there that a lot of people don't know. I had a great friend of mine who's a lead singer of a band, Artie Joyner, and he was saying how he used to enjoy going to Charleston until he started learning more about the things that were going there. Because a lot of people love to visit Charleston and see it, but yes, it's like people have learned to deal with certain things because the powers that be, they fight to keep it there.
Yeah.
Me as a person of color, me as a black man being from Charleston, of course, when my mom always used to say certain things to keep our minds straight about what was going on or what had gone on. And so it was kind of hard for us to understand because we weren't living that. Did I see certain things that went on in other places that I lived? Of course. But that was just something specific that I would say, like, man, why is it like that? I just didn't understand it being a military kid. And it has always bothered me. And you spoke of empathy earlier. I'm a very empathetic person. And as a grown man, and I was with my wife, and my wife's from Mississippi. So my wife, just real deal. So, we've come from two places that are something else. So as my cousin Leo's taking us down, and I'm just looking at things. So I had never been to that market. I went to the Battery a whole lot of times. My mom would drive us to the Battery because I had family that actually lived down in North Charleston and actually did very well on both sides of the family. And but man, just going down there and seeing things, it bothered me also. It really bothered me. And I was just like, because I see things and then reading stuff, I'm just like, man, you mean to tell me that's what that was? You mean to tell me? Because I didn't know. I really didn't know the history of Charleston like that. Being from Charleston, I still didn't know the history. So there's a lot of things that I don't like. I don't like watching a lot of movies that are speaking about that kind of stuff like that. I've just been kind of, it's the reality, but sometimes it's just like, come on, man, what are we holding on to? What's going on here? And I don't like to see anybody look down upon. I don't like the negativity of certain things. And I know, just like you were saying, like in Delaware is history, but they have it a certain way. It's not people still kind of embracing it and celebrating it in that manner. And,
right.
And I think that it Ice-T said something. It kind of passes that racist baton on to the next generation, on and on and on. When he said that, it meant so much to me because I was like, that's it. People teach this stuff and they pass it on. In my life, I've had friends of all colors and nationalities, and it just never mattered to me what you were. I was never looking at your skin color or your ethnicity and saying you're this or that. So going back and seeing those things and then, learning more about that history, yes, it bothered me too, to be honest with you. And, change sometimes in certain places happens slowly. I don't know if it'll ever change there in my lifetime. Things have changed now. Let me say that. But I don't know if it'll get to a point where people really understand that, hey, this is offensive. Yeah. You not understand because you're really just looking at your history of your family. Oh, this is history. Okay, we understand that. You can celebrate your history in another way other than just throwing it in everybody's face.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you something. Usually I don't really even talk about stuff like this because it bothers me. It really bothers me. And I always tell my wife, she's just like, why you? I was like, because it bothers me. And I don't want to get to where I just get so heated about stuff because I know I have nothing but love for everybody. And I don't understand how people don't want to love or have love because love feels good, man. I don't know what the deal is with hate. I don't understand it. And then when you start doing the history and you're seeing all the things, because I've done my research on it, and you start finding out, you're like, wow, so this started here, or this was going on here, and this is how this was here. But there's so much to uncover. There's so much that's hidden. And I even wrote a song with my band now, Plastic Catastrophe with Lord Nelson. Everything that I've been told, I now question. Others' truths I bought and sold as life lessons. But when you start doing your own research, whether it's religious or whatever, once you start going back and looking at things, you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. This is what really happened? So
Yeah.
it's difficult to digest sometimes, but I hear you, my brother.
I think the thing that was also kind of wild was just, you hear about family money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever really seen family money until I was in the South, and I'm like,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's this thing too where it kind of starts getting into more of, a political, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of different things where you're just like, and I've actually been thinking a lot about this. I don't know if you watch the show Atlanta, Donald Glover's show.
Yeah, I love Atlanta. Uh-huh.
So I just finished the third season that just came out. I just finished it.
Uh-huh.
And there were 2 episodes because they do these like standalone episodes in conjunction with the story of, Paperboy and all them out in overseas on tour. And there was 1 episode that just really, 2 episodes that really kind of stuck out because it just, you can't help but think about it. And that's what I love about that show is just how it's able to, make you think about things, even if you're not in that boat of, being a POC or any of these things, or growing up poor, growing up in the South, growing up whatever.
Right.
The way that they're able to tell these stories, just it's like a think piece. It's almost like a thesis. Like, here, I'm gonna present this with you and just see how you react to it.
Indeed.
And spoilers to a degree, but it was the episode where basically, and Chappelle did this, but in a way funnier way. This is a way more serious matter. Basically, the idea of reparations.
Right.
The episode where basically, if your family, as a white person, was found to have owned someone's family, they could come to you and seek restoration and reparations and so forth.
Right.
And it was kind of wild to see it, because it was one of those where, you see a man kill himself because he just didn't want to admit that his family owned slaves and that they had a part in this heinous part of history, and that he didn't see a way out because he couldn't financially make it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was crazy because as that scene happened, he's talking so jovial, and he's like, oh, we'll endure, we'll get through, all these things, we'll band together. It's basically flipping the race, the way the race thing happens.
Right.
And then to see that he didn't see that there was a way out, so he chose to kill himself.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I see the bigger picture of that, of like, flip it. If he was black, that's how you're basically saying that's how your culture feels. I'm always behind. I'm always this. And what is my option? We're going to get through it. I'm not going to, because I'm not that strong. But we as a people are going to get through this. Yeah. And it was really crazy to kind of to see. And I love the last shot of this fancy restaurant with old white people serving a whole bunch of black families. And it was just like, man, it kind of, that took it all the way back to where, kind of saying, bringing it back to the Charleston thing of indentured servants and so forth, and having to pay your way out of freedom, because basically that's what they're doing. They're paying their way back to their debts to be free.
Right.
And it was just so crazy to see in, an hour episode to just be like, man, that is fucking heavy to think about all the things that you're presenting visually, what you're talking about culturally, what you're talking about historically.
Yes.
It's really left a lasting impact since I saw it, obviously. And then the other one was, the alumnus from a high school coming back and buying his racist ass high school and giving all the black kids free college. Yeah. But you had to earn it based on your black scale. And then this one kid, father and presumably a white mother, and who looked white, was like, well, I guess I'm going to go do this because it's my only opportunity to go to college. Right. And to see the interview process they had to go through, and just literally everything, and the sad reality of another black kid being denied because he wasn't black enough, but then he got shot by the police. And the dude, as the episode's ending, goes, getting shot by the police is the most black thing you could ever do. Here's the check for your college, go on your journey, young man, or whatever. And to see the other dude just like it was just like, fuck, man, this is so crazy to, like, again, take these things we all know to be true and just kind of flip them on their heads to where it's like you can't help but think about these things. And at times it's like you feel like we have progressed as a country, but it's easy for me to say that as a white person who didn't go through any of these things, doesn't continue to go through these things. So to see it in a form of entertainment, to make at least me think of these things, I'm like, I wonder how many other white people will watch this and understand really the message that you're seeing and what it's speaking to. And even in that last episode, your white privilege.
Right. Well, you got real deep on that, man. But honestly, it is those moments to make you think if you watch it. If you watch it and you pay attention, and you'll understand so much, because I believe that on both sides, if you watch it, it makes everybody think. It makes me as a person of color think. It makes any other race think about it. It's just like, wow, that's interesting. And that's what's good about it, that it opens up those things that maybe there can be a better dialect or better conversation between people about those kind of things that go on. And that's why I appreciate it. It's Donald Glover did a magnificent, his writers, just magnificent. The whole show, all seasons were really, really great. And, you know, he had a platform to say something and he said it. And so, you know, it's all about how we take it and what we see. And you said earlier about, you know, people's perspectives. Certain people might see it another way. I know I'm going to see it for what it is. You know, I'm going to see it for what it is. I mean, that's just me. I love to be educated by certain things because I don't know everything. And so, you know, being educated and being able to listen to somebody else and learn from somebody else is very, very important. We can't always think that we know everything. I know so many of my friends, you know, and I do it with them. I call myself Mr. 99.9% correct. And it bothers them. And I know it bothers them, so I say it purposely. But I say that because if you and I are speaking brutally, that's love. If you and I are speaking and you're asking me a question or you're saying something that I don't know, well, I'm shutting my mouth and I'm learning from it. You know, I usually only talk about things that I really know about. That's why I say I'm 99.9% correct about. But if I don't know, I'm going to shut my mouth and I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn. A lot of people just yap, just to be talking. And when they do that, that just opens it up for me to just be, you know, not Dave Chappelle, but be a comedian in my own right and laugh at them and you know, just joke them for just saying crazy stuff. But yes, man, definitely there's so much out there to be learned if people want to learn, if people want to be educated. Yes, some people feel like they're going to lose something. And I don't know what you feel like you're going to lose, because I'm going to tell you what, it can be hard for everybody out there. And yes, indeed, certain people can say, hey, well, I'm glad I don't have to go through that. You know, I can remember speaking with Sean on the bus, we were in the van on tour here in the States. And I don't know how we got on the subject, but we were talking about it. But I was like, Sean, just honestly, I mean, how much of this stuff knocks on your door? I mean, I live in the suburbs. You know, I don't see a lot of stuff, you know, crazy stuff, but there's been stuff that goes on. But mind you, there's a super expensive neighborhood across from where I live that's way more expensive than my neighborhood. And there's some people in there that killed each other. Yeah. Listen, problems and issues can happen with anybody. I don't care what color you are. I don't care where you are, who you are. Things can happen. So just keeping it real. I just think that everybody can be educated on things, and things can happen to anybody, and just take the time to respect everybody else. Just respect your neighbor. I'm not jealous of anybody. I'm only happy for you. If you get $1 billion, of course, I'd love to have $1 billion too, but I'm not jealous because you have $1 billion and I don't. I'm going to continue to live my life. That doesn't control how I live my life. My happy is controlled by me. And so I'm going to do my best to live the life I have been given, and, you know, not try to hurt anybody else. And, you know, I pray that nobody tries to hurt me in any kind of way. And I just want to do the best that I can for my family and live this American dream that we're supposed to have, and just continue to do my thing and enjoy my music and live my life. That's it. I'm on Brutally Speaking, man. I know life is good. You know what I'm saying?
It's funny you mentioned something that I've talked quite a bit about recently, which is I think I'm at and I have been for a little while. I'm at this point in my life where it's okay to not know something.
Right.
I think we live in this culture now where, I mean, we literally have the world's information
Yes, we do.
in our fingertips, and it baffles me to watch people spout off about something they don't know because they read a headline or they read a piece or they only read things or get information from like-minded people, hive mind, basically.
Yes.
And it's funny that we don't do our due diligence anymore. And but like I think more of the point, like I said, it's more that I think people are afraid to admit that they don't know something because I feel like they think it's a sign of weakness.
Right.
And to me, I feel like it's more of a sign of knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. And it's okay to not know everything because how else are you going to learn otherwise?
Indeed. And hey, listen, true statement. And I'll take it on one of my son's coaches. He said this. He said, I don't know why these guys go out here on this basketball court and they say they shoot threes very well, like Steph Curry shoots threes. Why are they trying to dunk the ball? When you're out there trying to dunk the ball and you can't get up there and dunk the ball, you show your weakness and it looks bad for you. Do what you do well. Do what you do well. And I was just like, man, because I could see it. You know, when he was explaining, I was just like, that's right. I want to do what I do well. I'm not saying you can't try other things, you know, fine. It's love. You might find out that you're good at something else. But if you know there's something that you don't do super well, there's no need to go out there and like, you know, it's like, hey man, I'm gonna outrun this Ferrari. Come on, guy. Are you gonna really outrun this Ferrari? I mean, just but even the fact that you would attempt to, knowing good and well, that's nothing that's gonna happen. You know,
that's ego. That's ego getting in the way.
Listen, ego. And I like to say a lot of times LSE. I say a lot of people have LSE and there's low self-esteem. And I was just like, I'm not perfect. But one thing I know is who I am. I am confident in the person that I am. I know who I am. And I'm not struggling to be anybody else. And I know that may be difficult because, as you say, we have this phone and internet, and we see so many things that are bombarding our minds with who we're supposed to be. And yes, it can affect us at times. But the older I get, the more I just understand that I am so good being me. I'm so... Man, listen, I'm sitting in this car. I love this jumpsuit I'm in. And, you know, this is, I was born this way and I'm happy to have it. You know what I'm saying? It's mine. I'm the owner of me. So I'm going to live my life as I see fit, man. I'm going to do the best that I can. And when I'm in my house, I'm the king of my castle and I run it accordingly. Now, when I come out into the bigger world and I'm with everybody else, I want to respect them as much as I can. And I want them to give the same to me. No, I don't want to step on your shoes. No, I don't want to cut you off in traffic. And if I do, I apologize. You might give me the middle finger and scream and yell at me, but you know what? I'll probably never see you again. So you know what? I smile and I move on. You know, it's done. You know, just a moment in time. I'm going to continue on with my life, and I pray that you continue on with yours. You know, so I'm all about love.
Absolutely. I feel like that's a good wrapping point actually for this, because I feel like otherwise we're just going to kind of keep rehashing a lot of the same things that we've already talked about. But very much have appreciated the time. I know, you know, your show, for those who don't know, I think it's kind of like this, you know, it's just about getting to know people and you know, where they're from, and kind of the same thing of what this show really is, you know, kind of going back to how it used to be. You know, you sit around, you just kind of learn about people, and you sit, you know, real connection through conversation, you know, not through digital means or things like that. But I think it's about kind of going back to the way it was when, you know, I'll say at least when I grew up, it didn't have all these things. So you had to learn how to communicate with people. You had to learn how to talk and do all these things. So I appreciate the time, because it's one of the few things that we all have an equal amount of, but is equally valuable to all of us. So I appreciate the hour with you, and hopefully we'll get to do this again at some other point.
Hey, man, I'm honored, man. Anytime you need me, man, I appreciate it, man. You might have to come on and do the same for me, and let me ask you some craziness and do what I do, and you know, get to know more about you. But just like you said, man, it is about conversation. I don't like to say I'm interviewing people. I just like to say I'm having a conversation with people, and I'm going to enjoy and laugh and do all those things, man. But listen, I'm super appreciative, man. I really thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
And you do the same, man.
So that was my chat with Lord Nelson, again, formerly of Stuck Mojo, currently live and loud with the Lord podcast. I want to thank him for the time and just the willingness to kind of go all over the place and have a real conversation about a lot of different things. I think it's one of those things where, the part about my trip going through the Carolinas and going through and experiencing what I did and what I talked about, I was a little bit hesitant to bring it up because I feel like it's one of those where sometimes maybe, I hate at times that it seems like when you have people from different backgrounds that all anyone really ever wants to talk about is the differences between the two of you and, whatever. But then I'm also like, like I said in the thing, I was like, for those that may hear or more so that will watch the episode, you're going to see me make a face when he's talking about, South Carolina and Charlotte and all that kind of stuff. And in my head, I'm like, does it need to be brought up? And then like part of me is like, well, what's the point? And then, immediately you see and or hear, you kind of hear me have this like inner monologue where I'm like, do I say something because it bothers me? Or do I not say something because maybe people won't understand why it bothers me, why it should bother more people, and that there is a bigger talking point here that we need to have these awkward conversations. And I don't think they're necessarily awkward because if it makes you feel something and if it makes you feel that way, like I literally looked to my wife and I was just like, I don't even want to be in this fucking building. Like this, I don't want to be here. Like seeing this and being here makes me angry. Seeing this shit the whole fucking weekend we were down here in different increments of things makes me angry. Because that's not who I am. And that's not how I treat people. So it's something where I feel like maybe having this platform and getting to talk to someone who will talk about these things will allow me to maybe have a bigger conversation and make people think about these things on a bigger scale. Which, again, kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning of all this, which is why sometimes you realize relationships can bear different fruit for you, but that you need to understand that sometimes you're not going to get anything back out of something and all you're doing is putting in all the work and getting nothing in return for it. So why would you do that? All of that said, I hope you actually enjoyed this conversation. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Like I said, the intro and outro to this are a little bit different than how I normally do these, but I feel that's really what it is. I feel a certain way, and I feel like I should use this to talk about these things and these experiences. All of that said, if you would like to keep up with Lord Nelson, you can find him on Facebook at Lord Nelson Nation. You can find him on Instagram at Live and Loud with the Lord, on Twitter at Lord N Nation, or just, go to the website that's listed below in the show notes. That's why all those are there. So you can quickly reference something. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast itself, you can find us at Bruce Speak Pod on all the socials. If you would like to email me, brutallyspeaking@gmail.com. Also want to give thanks to our sponsors for continuing to support the show. Rockabilia.com. Use our code BRUTALLY at checkout. Take 10% off your total purchase order. On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point, especially with the holidays around the corner. You know you're going to be in a lot of photos. So use our code BSP15 at checkout. Take 15% off your total purchase order. Last but not least, The Bean Bastard. Go to thebeanbastard.com. Pick up some delicious coffee. All of the various things that they have there. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, please go check out the brick and mortar store. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there for all the reasons that I have mentioned plenty of other times. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will see you next time with Daniel Terry as the guest. That was a good one. I'll see you then.